you so much for being here. My name's Ada Jen. I'm the co-producer and the co-host for Talk Stories, an Asian American Asian diaspora storytelling show. We started producing the show in 2017. Gosh, this is unbelievable, mainly because of it. We usually have to be at a particular location, but this is because of online. So we are able to invite tellers from out of town, and also to but also to have collaborations from different organizations. And so I just want to, I want a show of hands, for how many of you this is your first time to Talk Stories? Can you give me a, very good, very good. So I want to explain a little bit of the principle for Talk Stories. This is I want to mention something very important. There's a danger to one single story. So it's really important that we feature and showcase different points of view, different perspectives, different stories in the community. And I created this show for not only to showcase artists, but also people who may not be performers, right? I want people to think about telling stories as a form of oral history in action, as a public performance, right? You tell the truth to the universe and you own that truth, you own your story. There's that. The other thing that is really important is really to encourage community members, not just leaders, but also community members to share their story. Everyone has a story or has stories to share. And it has always been my work to encourage everyone to share their stories. So I'm going to introduce the co-host, Randy King, and have Randy King to say a few words.
Thank you so much, Ada, for working with me on this show. This has been a great experience seeing all of you today. And really, thank you so much for spending your Wednesday evening with us, especially as we're winding the year down. It's been a very difficult year for many of us. So thank you so much. And tonight, both Ada and I look forward to hearing these stories from these amazing tellers. And I'm very excited about it. So thank you so much for joining us. And also in the meantime, I have also just put down the link of the 4 organizations that are collaborating with us. So the Chicago, the Chinese American Museum of Chicago, the National Cambodian Heritage Museum, and the JASC, the Japanese American Services Committee, and OCA Greater Chicago. So I put these links in there. And if you're interested in learning more about these organizations, there they are in the chat. So feel free to check them out, and thank you so much to them.
All right, so I'm going to have, a lot of people are having difficulty entering. I'm going to have them contact Randy, so Randy can take care of the last minute issue. So sorry about this. All right, very good. I see a few people who are able to get in. Very good, very good. Again, I want to say that, as much as we're online, this is usually we have to go to the specific site, Chinese American Museum of Chicago, Japanese American Service Committee, and National Cambodian Heritage Museum. But because this is a virtual event, that we are able to have everyone co-sponsor and gather everyone from different organizations here at the space. So I want to shout out to all the collaborating organizations. They have been strong supporter for Talk Stories. And so pay attention to the fantastic work that they are doing in the community. Randy put a link there. So to pay attention, check the link, check their website, Facebook. And so we can see what everyone is doing, appreciate the work, learn each organization's work, community history, This is what this event is all about. So we're going to start the show. I'm so excited to have this line up. We have artists, we also have community members, community leaders, everyone. We have people from out of town. This is for our community gallery, Share Story. It's about intimacy, it's about vulnerability. We're going to go on a journey. It's about emotion, not just about stories. So Randy, I'm going to have you introduce our first performer.
Thank you so much. So I would like to introduce to you our next performer. So I knew him because Ada brought his name to my attention one day. And I found out that he is a musician. And so I was checking his Instagram out and I'm like, okay, let me figure out who he is and let's have a conversation. So we met one day and we bonded over stories about our mother, as we are both caregivers, and it's something that I felt very passionate about. And also he became my first guest on my podcast last year, and today he is going to be performing for us for the first time virtually. So, Ascorn, are you ready?
Hey, ready. Thank you.
All right, and also please give a nice silent applause. Use your emoji and please encourage to use the chat so that you can give any wonderful feedback to him. Take it away, Edscorn.
Thanks for the intro. Thanks for being here, guys.
It's raining in the hard drive of the cloud. Something feels left out. I think it's all because you're pushed against the wall. Yeah, you need to breathe. And if you won't get out the way or feel the same, well then you might not leave out of here. Yes, and I know you feel miserable, but how could you just watch as we fall down? When I'll search for a love, but I found another ghost. And he looked just like me. Yeah, and he just looked at me, oh, and froze. And so just hold each other close. You'll never know when exactly we'll be caught. just when the pieces all come settling down, and I need some time to stew. Yes, I'm feeling you. Look into my eyes, can't help but carry me away. And oh, how did we fall in worlds we can't stay in? Yeah, we're always on the prowl, but I feel you loosening my grip. Oh, I'm feeling right. Can't stop the truth, can't stop the face, so fuck the promised land. And you'll be fine if you don't architect your dreams. So fuck the promised land, and you'll be fine if you don't architect your dreams. So fuck the promised land, and you'll be fine if you don't architect your dreams. So fuck the promised land, and you'll be fine if you don't architect your dreams.
Thank you so much. My name's Edscorn Wong. Back to you guys, Ada and Randy.
Oh my God. Wow, wow, wow. Wow. Can we give, if you want to write down your admiration, praise through chat, that's fabulous too. Oh my goodness, that was beautiful, beautiful. Gosh, Edscorn, you should be a recording artist already. That was amazing. Do people agree? I could just host a show for you to sing. Oh my God. This is what the show is about. We want to uncover people's talent. Some stories can be told through music. Some stories can be told through personal narratives. Some stories have to be told through play. And we're just finding different ways to share stories. Dance, theater, everything. Edscorn, thank you so much. Can we give Edscorn another round of applause? That was amazing, 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 amazing. Thank you so much for kicking us off the event. Are you ready for stories? Good, good. Everyone doing good? Our first storyteller, Rohan Anand. I met Rohan actually at one of the shows that I produced, Queer Asian, American Asian Diaspora storytelling show, and he told a fantastic story. Brilliant writer, such an excellent writer, such a great teller. He's an IT technology project manager, yoga instructor. We also both got our degree from UT at Austin, multi-talented. Rohan, take it away. Let's welcome Rohan.
Thank you so much, Ada. Thank you so much, guys. And once again, Edscorn, that was amazing. You can't see my dog behind me, but you lulled him to sleep. So it was just amazing poetic justice. I never expected that the Chicago 2019 Pride Parade would be its last for a year. The picture behind me actually features a float that I created and that I marched with. And there are probably some of you on this call that marched with us. And it's also hard to believe that it will never happen the way that it happened that year again, at least for some time. And there's a reasoning for that. That year I'd come across an organization called Tricone in Chicago. Many of you may know of them. They're a 501(c) nonprofit that exists for LGBTQIA people of South Asian origin. Coincidentally, in spring of 2019, there was a Jai Ho event, and it was one of the fabulous parties where they have Bollywood drag and dancers and performers, a community of artists that are kind of like here, and we would all gather at Big Chicks. It was a very grassroots event, and it was just filled with lots of love and energy and people from all over that came together to celebrate being queer and being South Asian. I met Shruti Kannan that night, who was the president of the board at that time. And she is a transgender educator in the Chicagoland area, and also has become one of my good friends since. I told her that I wanted to get involved in Tricone and look for volunteer opportunities. And so we connected and we stayed in touch. This was an interesting time too, because I had just left my dream job, a job that had unfortunately turned really rough in a very short period of time, filled with a lot of things that actually crushed me and left me feeling drained professionally for the very first time in my life, to an extent that I had to step away from corporate America for a period. As I was spending that time in this beautiful spring of 2019 in Chicago, I felt my life suddenly come back to normal and color vision. And while I was rattled by what happened to me at my job, I was not broken. That meant that I had the time to watch TV and unplug and listen to podcasts. And two shows in particular had graphed me and made me start to see things differently. One was a show on Amazon Prime called Made in Heaven, which features two Delhi-based wedding planners, Tara and Karan, who are best friends and come from different worlds. And they carry immense pain from their past that continue to haunt them in the present. But as wedding planners, they have to deal with everything that takes place. What happens is that essentially through all the twists and ties, it brings out a lot of things in the Indian culture that society is facing today. But being more than anything, people that needed to advocate for political corruption of LGBTQ rights, Islamophobia, guilt, shame, embarrassment, humiliation, all of these things. And that show changed my life. One actress in particular named Kalki Kekla lured me in, as she's an atypical Bollywood star. Her parents are French immigrants who grew up speaking French in Pondicherry, India. And she also learned French and English and Tamil and Hindi. And a lot of people claim that she is not a typical Bollywood star in the way she looks. But I found out that she has a podcast, and that is called My Indian Life. From there, I immediately downloaded it and I started to binge. She featured guests who are male Bollywood dancers, female hockey players, adopted origins with disfigured looks, survivors of assault and rape, and so much more. So back to my life in Chicago in May 2019, I had started to amass an incredible group of Desi and Bollywood-loving friends in Chicago. Why not find a way to get Tricone, the nonprofit that threw all of these fabulous events, into the Chicago Gay Pride Parade in 2019? Yes, the actual Pride Parade. We had provided a space of visibility and safety for LGBTQIA people from the South Asian background. But that includes so much more than just one or two countries. It includes queer people in the diaspora from Pakistan to India to Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Maldives, people who grew up in Africa, people who grew up in Canada, the Caribbean, Guyana, you name it. And I wanted to spearhead this. It was a shot in the dark. I emailed the Chicago Pride Parade organizer, Richard Pfeiffer, and he told me instantaneously that there were spots left. I would later find out that there's actually a 10-year wait for most corporations to get a spot in the Pride Parade. Not only that, as a nonprofit, they managed to get us in because we had some spaces arranged and we were good to go. Next, I was able to secure a trolley that we could use with air conditioning and coolers. We could play music from it, hang up flags, have banners, and march alongside it. I then rallied so many people into motion. I sent out interest forms and generated signups from 50 marchers across Tricone. Friends of friends. I had people fly up from Dallas to come march with us. People who were Desi, people who were not a part of the LGBTQIA people. We had a very talented board member of Tricone who designed a beautiful drawing for all of us to wear on the back of our shirts in unison. We had an all-star DJ named Nevin from Jai Ho's parties that cultivated an amazing 4-hour mix of Bollywood songs from all kinds of decades. We launched a fundraiser with $3,000, and through the generous support of so many people, we were able to fully fund this parade. And for me, the planning was a no-sweat affair. I had such an incredible team of people that were partnering with me and carrying all of this through such flawless execution. On the night before the parade, I remember June 30th, 2019, it was another Jai Ho night, this time at Mary's Attic, and it was almost like a pep rally for the march the following morning. And all I told the people to do was bring energy the following day. On Sunday, we showed up and we began to deck out the van with every flag possible. We were among the first 25 to go, and so we had just enough time to get everyone to the start point and ready to fire off. We had nervously installed a generator in the back to play music on loud amplifiers so that they were able to get the DJ to walk with us. In that very moment, I had so much anxiety that I needed to cleanse from my system because it had been 2 months since I had left my toxic work environment. I had accepted a new job offer at a new firm that I was going to start in a few weeks in August of 2019. So I had some time to enjoy my summer. But all of this foreshadowing made me feel like I was still having to hide from something. Maybe my old coworkers, maybe my old inner demons, the things that had just walked around and carried me around all in the past. And things that would give me panic attacks in the past or all that. I had a feeling that I would see them at the parade and they would see us marching and that the judgment and all of these things would come together. But the parade started. And then the next few hours were a total blur. I was drenched in sweat by the end. I was out of breath most of the time, running back and forth between crowds of people. I was dancing, dumping water on myself, cheering, shouting, celebrating, hugging, kissing, and I was just being me. I couldn't see the crowds. I was too busy having fun and ensuring things were flowing smoothly. And best of all, our group just simply couldn't stop dancing. The music mix inspired every individual of all shapes and colors to be out there marching and showing off queer Desi pride. By the time that we were at the end of the routes, the overcast clouds of the day had started to appear. The trolley had to drop us off in Edgewater, so we needed to get the party from Lincoln Park all the way back up to Edgewater within about 20 minutes. As we were literally sorting through everything and getting the wheels to go up north on Lakeshore Drive, the entire parade was rained out as the biggest thunderstorm happened in Chicago for the next couple hours. We had literally just made it in time. And it was funny that later on in the day, I was riding back down south, and it appeared that the float of my former employer hadn't been able to make the cut. And their sad little float was shown rained out somewhere up north on Halstead. So, well, hey, that happens. The way I look at it, though, is that June 2019, that day, June 30th, could have just as well been my wedding day. I was elated, and I was even more ecstatic to find that someone had taken 800 photos of me on my digital camera to capture every moment. I'm so proud of Tricone and thankful for having them give me the power to entrust me, someone they didn't know, and for pulling this off. The Tricone Pride Parade organizer, Richard Pfeiffer, the guy that had let us in, he died actually earlier this year in January. And I was unsure what to do if we would be able to get a slot into the next year, since I guess his husband is taking it over. In addition to that, it looks like, we lost our pride this year in the sense that we knew it, and that pride has taken on a new meaning, especially with Black and Indigenous people of color and the rally for justice and anti-racism. But more than anything, that was at least the baseline year, and we're going to be back and we're going to be there in full form. And if there was anything that made me feel affirmed in what I was doing, it was knowing that it's like a parade in life, and you don't have to see the people on the sides. And you're marching forward with your life and your vision and your energy and your people. And if people are in front of you and not moving, then they're standing in your way. And they either need to be marching alongside you or up ahead of you to lead the way, or they can get back behind you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rohan. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and the work that you're doing. I also think about what communities mean for us. What do they mean for us with our intersections, the complications in our own journey? Where do we find communities? Where do we find a place to call home? And what do we want our communities to be reimagined into? So let's think about it. And Rohan, thank you so much. Everyone, give us your silent applause and your loud words of praise in the chat. Thank you so much, Rohan.
Thank you.
So moving forward, I would love to introduce to you our next storyteller. So her name's Veronica Murashtike. I connected with Veronica through Instagram, and what I found out was that she is also in a band called Cloud Tone. She was originally from Southern California, went to school in Chicago, studied at the University of Chicago, and got her degree in environmental science. And this will be her first storytelling experience. So I'm really excited to have you share your story, and please give her a warm welcome. And I think what Ada would always say is, please be nice to all new storytellers. So Veronica, are you ready?
I'm ready. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, great. So I'm Veronica. I wrote about in the pandemic, I've had a lot of time to think about things, and I decided to write about my experience as a mixed Asian American. So I identify as a 4th generation mixed race Asian American. I'm content with being mixed and content with being Asian American. Growing up in a heavily Korean community, I never felt ostracized for looking Asian and never really thought about what I looked like until others told me what I thought I looked like. Of course, outside commentary didn't help, but my identity crisis didn't truly begin until I started to ruminate on the specifics of what I was when I got older. My experience being perceived as the other started in elementary school. I was playing with some of my classmates, and when one asked, "What are you?" I didn't know about white being an ethnicity, so I told them Asian and European, but that felt wrong. We went back to playing, but I kept thinking about my bland response. Even though this was a watered down answer, a lot of people around me were monoracial, and I didn't want to stick out. As a kid, you just want to feel like you belong. I felt embarrassed for the difference and not knowing how to respond. To understand myself better, I made a pie chart to detail what I was. I had my dad tell me my ethnic percentages, and with that information, I made what I considered to be a scientific pen and marker representation, which put my mind at ease. It was relieving to see how things fit into place. The case was closed and I felt whole. The advent of DNA tests caused me to return to and review the pieces of my pie chart. Unsurprisingly, my family members' results did not confirm the clean fractions that I once thought accurate. The side that I thought to be fully Japanese now has a streak of Korean in it. My Chinese Hawaiian grandmother's results claimed that she was more Polynesian than she thought. Part of my mom's family apparently hails from Sinaloa, Mexico, but that was never a region that my grandmother mentioned when speaking about her origins. It was always Guadalajara and Granada. And then, to further divide me, meager 1% pieces made themselves known. It made me wonder, at what amount is being something so infinitesimal that you're supposed to disregard it, ignore it, or cast it off? I no longer felt whole. What was I able to claim as me, or my identity? I had a strong case of racial imposter syndrome as a result. As I enter the second half of my 20s, a new question has popped up. If I do ever have biological children with someone, would I need them to have at least one ethnicity in common with me so that my kids wouldn't feel even more confused about their identities than me? What if this person isn't East Asian? I feel connected to my Asian heritage and at home in the community, but is that something they would be able to connect to and have as well? Or what if we don't look similar at all? I always like to tease my mom by saying that we don't look alike, and was aware that sometimes people would ask her if she was my nanny. People on the street would go even so far as to ask her if she had adopted me. She told me that people asked her where she got me from. When she said that I was hers, they would laugh, and I was shocked to hear that. Their phrasing was insulting, like I was a nice designer bag that she had bought at a department store. Would I have that same experience as well if my kids didn't look like me? A lot of the time, multiracial and multi-ethnic identity is confusing to figure out. But I feel lucky that in the past year or so, I've found an online community where I've been able to elaborate on questions like these. It has been interesting to hear from the perspectives of other people across the globe. I asked the group if their parents had had similar experiences with strangers on the street, and of course the answer was yes. I relayed their experiences back to my mom, and she said, "Wow, I'm not alone." And of course this experience has happened to probably every parent of a mixed child, but when you don't know anyone else, you only think it's affecting you. Sometimes I feel like I don't deserve to be connected to all these cultures, and that I don't have a claim to any of them. Can I identify with my Mexican heritage? Am I allowed to? But honestly, being around an eighth isn't that small compared to how small everything else is in relation to my whole. Should I identify with what I'm the most of, or just what I look like? I've never really identified with my white grandfather, and I think it's because I never really liked him or had a bond with him. If we had a loving relationship, maybe it would be different, and I would feel more in touch with my Southern European ancestry. And I have no solid answers, just questions and speculations. I've read other people's essays about being mixed, and I think it's funny because there are a bunch of questions posed too, without many hard answers. Maybe it's because there are no right answers. For example, some people find the "what are you" question invasive, whereas others love to divulge their ethnicities. So what's right to them will be different. A lot of the time, I see posts that validate my and others' experiences. There's a lot of great memes and jokes made about our disparate yet shared experiences. I've appreciated reading these posts since it makes me feel less like an imposter. If anything, I'm grateful to have found communities that I feel comfortable in, online and in person, and that what I once thought to be unique experiences can also be universal. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Can we give Veronica a round of applause? Fabulous, fabulous. How do people, yeah, gosh, how many of you can relate to Veronica's stories through chat, expressed through chat? So relatable. Absolutely, absolutely. How many of you can relate to the stories that have been shared? The first Rohan story, Veronica story. Give me a sign that you can relate so far, the stories that have been told. There's a reason why I want to put on their stories first, really for us to think about identities that we don't necessarily talk a lot. Identities are not that simple, clear cut. It's far more complicated. And this is really the show for us to really explore the complexity of contemporary Asian American, Asian diaspora experiences. And the other thing I want to mention for both of them, there is power when you tell stories out loud, when you claim that truth for yourself. It's a way of construct, develop, and claim your identity. So thank you so much for Veronica. Beautiful, beautiful job. Thank you, Rohan. How's everyone feeling so far? Doing well? Good, good, very good. Are you ready for our next storyteller? Our next storyteller is Isabel Garcia Gonzalez. She's a writer, educator, facilitator. She's well published. Got a FMA with MFA. I'm sorry, in creative writing. How I met Isabel is there's this group. There's so many communities, collectives, organizations out there. Tricon Chicago, and this one's Banyan, Asian American Writers Collective. Every second Sunday in the morning, they gather, and I have been fortunate enough to be a part. Fabulous group. Check them out. So, Isabel, please take it over.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm going to share my screen now. All right. Can you see it and hear me okay? All right, great. So thank you, Ada and Randy, for creating this space, and thank you to my fellow storytellers for sharing your stories. I want to give a special thanks to Ada for letting me share my story in a sort of unconventional way. Tonight, I'll be sharing my story through comics. I'm calling them fledgling comics because I am brand new at making comics, a total novice. But I have been fascinated at the stories that have emerged from this new part of my creative practice, which until now had been mostly focused just on writing. So I'll warn you now, my drawings are still very much fledgling. The form that I'm using is called Super Flash Comics, and it's based on a prompt by artist Linda Berry that I found on Instagram. You can find her prompt there if you want to try it yourself. It has a very time-pressured structure, which I've found to yield a lot of creative surprises since I can't judge what comes out so quickly. You make one of these pages in 11 minutes. As I read, stories from my life and from my ancestors have emerged in this new to me form. As I read my comics tonight, I'll also be providing image descriptions to make it more accessible. So here the image is a sampling of 3 comics that surprised me. Their titles are Lolo Emilio, Recovered Knowledges, and The Cigar Box. Tonight, I'll be sharing a comic called A is for Asian. The first panel says A is for Asian, and it has an image of an open book. The 2 pages are filled with illegible writing except for the letter A. Panel 2. I grew up in the Midwest and also went to college in the Midwest. Panel 2 shows buildings of Chicago on the left side, and on the right side is a building that says UW near a lake to represent Madison, Wisconsin. I saw somebody in the chat said they're from Madison. Hello. 3. Moving from the city to Wisconsin in a college town surrounded by so much farmland was a big change for me. When I was there in the mid-90s, there were only 9% students of color at the university. The panel shows 2 people facing each other talking. The person on the left says, "Hey, where are you from?" The person on the right, me, says, "Chicago." The person on the left answers, "I mean, where are you really from?" 4. I felt like an only a lot of the time. Sure, I had friends, but most of them just didn't get it. Most of them were white. Panel 4 shows 2 people talking to each other. I'm on the left saying, "Ugh, this guy on the street just called me a China doll." The other person answers, "He probably just meant you're pretty." 5. Luckily, I had Professor Manalo and my Tagalog class. I also joined the Asian American Student Union and edited their lit journal. Panel 5 is split into 2 images. On the left is a woman dressed in a suit. It's Professor Manalo saying, "Magandang umaga, class," which means good morning. On the right is an image of me working at a computer on the lit journal called From the Rim. 6. The Asian American Student Union was in the interim multicultural center, which was one big room where each student affinity group had 1 desk. Panel 6 shows 5 desks, each labeled with its own acronym: CSU, PRSU, AASU, BSU, NASU. 7. It was also the place where the university photographers would come to take pictures for brochures. Panel 7 shows a person in the foreground waving to a group of people in the background. The person in the foreground says, "Hi, come on down for a photo shoot." The group says, "Again?" 8. There were a lot of messed up things that I was beginning to understand in an intellectual way from some really great classes. Panel 8 shows a stack of books or course readers, a mug of steaming coffee, and a notebook. On the spines of the course readers are titles: Sociology of Gender, Women's Studies, Intro to Asian American Studies, Black Women in US History, Gender, Race, and Class in the Media, Multicultural Women's Autobiographical Voice. 9. I used to wait tables at a little Himalayan restaurant. One late night while riding my bike home after my shift, a car full of white guys pulled up next to me, threw trash at me, and yelled racist and sexist things. It was dark. The street was empty. Panel 9 shows me riding a bike and a car next to me. Trash is flying out of the car at me. Someone in the car is saying, "Me love you long time, long time." The Capitol building is in the distance. 10. It was late on a Saturday night, and when I got home, all my housemates were out at parties. I was scared, alone, and mostly angry. Panel 10 shows me coming home to a house with darkened windows. My bike is lying down in front of the house. I'm entering the front door saying, "Hello, anyone home?" 11. Meanwhile, I was doing a big research paper on Asian American activism, specifically the San Francisco Bay Area. I had never heard of any of this. I was inspired. Panel 11 shows a raised fist at the center with protest signs and people surrounding it. The signs read, Third World Liberation Front, strike, ethnic studies, serve the people, justice for the Manongs. 12. I wanted to go to California and learn about this firsthand. I decided to look for an internship, but how? This was 1996, pre-internet. Panel 12 shows me with a thought bubble. Inside the thought bubble is an image of the Golden Gate Bridge and some buildings. 13. So I went to the library as we did in those days. There was a room full of phone books from all over the country. I took the San Francisco Oakland white pages off the shelf and turned to the letter A. Panel 13 shows me sitting at a desk with a book. In the background are shelves and shelves filled with books. 14. I wrote down the name and address of every organization that sounded interesting as I combed through all listings that started with the word Asian. Then I went to the computer lab and wrote letters of inquiry to each one and mailed them. Panel 14 shows envelopes that are stamped and addressed to Asian Pacific Environmental Network, Asian Law Caucus, Asian Immigrant Women Advocates, and others that are illegible. 15. For a long time, my mailbox was empty. Then I got one response. Panel 15 shows a letter on letterhead that says AIWA, which stands for Asian Immigrant Women Advocates. Dear Isabel, it begins, and at the bottom it's signed, In Solidarity, Stacy Kono. 16. No one had ever written In Solidarity to me, to little old me before. I felt seen and part of something much larger than myself. Those two words changed my life. Even now, almost 25 years later, I know that to be true. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Isabel. It's really beautiful. And I just have to take a deep breath, and I hope that we all can take a collective breath right now, because as Asian Americans, we experience identity assaults that we never asked for. And that is the painful process of our identities and the experience that we carry when we don't have the blueprint of how to navigate these assaults on our identities. This story truly resonates with me because I think about how do we navigate our journey as outsiders, when we are seen as outsiders, when we are seen as foreigners, even in a land that we were born into, even going into a land that our parents had to escape from because of colonial violence. And I think about this, and I think we all can connect with these stories. And I want to say, Isabel, thank you so much for giving us the visual journey. And thank you so much for really sharing this with us today. So I'm very moved, and it is an honor. So please give her a quiet round of applause, and please share your words of praise in this chat. All right, so I'm going to bring it back to Etzkorn, which I'm very excited about once again. And I was just telling him before the show, and I'm going to take a page out of Ada's book here, because Etzkorn has not released his music. And since this is recorded, we're going to have a little accountability process. So starting now, every month that I do not see your music on my Spotify playlist, you're going to owe me lunch each month. This is the trick that Ada. Well, hey, I mean, you got people that want to now follow you. So, and I've been waiting to have your music released for the past year or so. So, but with that said, no pressure. Take it away, Etzkorn.
Hey, thanks. In regard to releasing music, I have been working diligently and hope to put some stuff together kind of as soon as I'm able to kind of just get my stuff together. But it's coming. It's definitely coming. I'm hoping to release something in the next month or two. Just some backstory for this next thing I'm going to share. I'm actually going to share a video with you guys, an original song and video. basically, I made this song a couple weeks ago, and I didn't know what it was about. Usually, I kind of know emotionally where the weight of a song is coming from, but for this song, I didn't really know. And I showed it to some of my good friends, and they're like, "Yeah, what is this about?" And they were like, "I don't know. It's definitely really heavy, but it's like they were like, it's industrial. I don't know." And I was trying to figure it out, and later, I think the next day, I was working on it some more, and I'd realized that a couple days before I made the song, my sister and her boyfriend just had dodged like a really horrible car accident, and that's where all the weight was coming from. And so when I realized that and I was working on this song, I just started crying while making it. And then so later that night, I cut together this video, and that's what I'm going to share. Thank you, guys. So you should be able to see my screen now. I encourage you to, if you have in the top right or somewhere on the screen, if you can see all the portraits, I encourage you to minimize that so you can't see me or anybody else. And now I'm gonna go ahead and mute my video and microphone and press play. That's all. Thank you, guys. Thanks for watching.
Thank you so much, Corn. Thank you for sharing this visual. And as I mentioned, the accountability process starts now. So, but thank you so much. I hope that you get to follow him and also bother him about releasing music. And also, I will think about foods that I would want because I get very hungry in January too. So, love you, Corn. So, in anyways, moving right along, I'm very excited to bring my next guest on here, and I have known her through the Khmer American Circle. I've connected with a number of Khmer American organizers in the past few years, and Sina Sam's name usually comes up on many occasions. And why does her name come up? Because she has been working for the governor's office in Washington State. She has worked very hard volunteering to end deportations in the Southeast Asian communities, which I really hope that you can connect with her on that. She is currently the organizing director, I believe the organizing director. I apologize if I'm not getting the right position, but she works for CREC, which is the Southeast Asia Resource Action Center. So I'm a huge fan of that organization. Earlier this year, I was trying to get her on my podcast, and her schedule was so busy that the one time that we did have that time to talk to, we ended up talking for 3 hours, so much that we ended up having a 2-part series on my episode, and we just talked on, and I'm just really proud to call her a friend, and I'm excited to bring her on. So Sina, thank you so much, and take it away.
Hi everyone, Diaspora to all my Khmer folks out there this evening. Thank you so much for the introduction, Randy. Quite generous of you. I actually, of all the artists, wonderful performers tonight, I would not consider myself one. So I apologize in advance for, sharing my piece that it's just a poem I wrote about a bit of my identity and sharing also with this identity, connecting it to how it informs a lot of the work I do with advocacy for deportations that impact Southeast Asian Americans, Khmer Americans in particular, and advocating for equity and equality types of social justice issues that impact a lot of our different communities, and historically those who are Indigenous and Black in particular. Have a lot of solidarity for all our communities who really work to struggle to find identities where we can uplift, support, celebrate, and be really comfortable in who we are, and those who are our allies and friends and community. So here is a short piece I wrote, mainly because Randy asked me to. So I've never done this before, again, disclaimer. And so I'll go into my piece. It's called Refugee Kid, K-I-D, Kawidang. So I am sharing this piece from Pullman, Washington, which is located in the homelands of the Nimipu tribe, also known as the Nez Perce and Palus people. And that is in eastern Washington state. All right, Refugee Kid. Oh, ban the bong ban dol chen ai. Kyom som lia hai lia tang alai. Tang pi rup kyom ban clear tau chngai. Quao quai, nies dai puk mien pil hai. Refugee kid. Kid, I kid you not, I was conceived and born in what would be considered the middle of nowhere. A valley between mountains, a clearing between trees, a tight spot between tigers and bears, snakes and landmines, war and genocide. A stateless, nationless, dangerous place, actually. Nowhere you would ever want your child to call home. But I was born there. Can you imagine a refugee camp, a makeshift tented, muddy encampment lined with tarp, wooden walls, and over 100,000 malnourished, dying, bleeding, tortured, hungry, starving, broken bodies, hearts, and souls? Well, I was born there. If you looked on a map now, you might find my birthplace in a small dot, some random empty clearing, somewhere between the border of Cambodia and Thailand. Land. I kid you not. My homeland is neither here or there, Seattle, Pullman, Cambodia, Khao Dang, or anywhere. You see, I was born a refugee kid, and refugee kids, we cross oceans, borders, skies, and mountains. We are the land, the bridge, hopes, dreams, and everything. Do you know what it means to be everything, but also having to start from nothing at the same time? When you think of a refugee, who do you see? Do you see me? Do you see salacious, heartbreaking, or pitiful descriptions of the poor refugees in this conflict or that conflict? Frozen in time, our identity always speaks to some awful time. This poor accompanied refugee child stuck at the border. This border and that border. Border. I kid you not. My homeland has no borders. You see, if you're born a refugee kid like me, there's no country to derive your citizenship. There's no easy family tree to fill in for that school assignment. There's no ancestry.com to look up your lineage, your history, your family, you know, those fun commercials. There's no easy way of asking, who are my people and how did I get here? There's no easy way of learning who we are. You see, being born a refugee kid means you must be everything while starting from nothing at the same time. Nothing. Do you know what it means to feel like to come from nothing? To not even feel pain because the trauma has numbed you to your bones? Do you know what it feels like to lose everything you've ever cared for or everyone you've ever loved? And people, maybe even people you don't even like, because when genocide sets in your name, all you want to see is life again in anything. I never lived through it because I'm a refugee kid. I know Ma Ba Om Ming, Mia Ming Pu Bong, the intergenerational trauma, the generation that has lived through it. We breathe it too. Every younger generation after you. Your pain, your trauma, your anguish, everything you tried to shield from us, everything you want to leave in a past lifetime, all your loss. Do you ever wonder why our languages feel like they are being lost? That with every younger generation of any hyphen American identity, Khmer American, Chinese American, Vietnamese American, Korean American, Italian American, Indian American. Wait, which Indian was that? Was that India or America? Or if you're African American, wait again. Which Black or African American was that? You see why we're lost for words when elders ask. Niang, we respond back in our broken, in our subtle fear of Khmer English, Khmerlish. Jamming, yes, Auntie, I know a little. But most times, even if we know more, we choose to respond in the later English because we know our broken tongues sting your heart. We know your hearts can't hold anymore. We know as refugee kids, we know that you've been through hell and back. If you've come from a world that creates us, refugee kids like me, then it's easier to be cruel than to care, to fail than to try, to push away than to hold close, to yell than to soothe, to hoard than to collect, to survive without ever knowing the possibility to thrive. We know, I know, but yeah, it's hard, right? My people, your people, our land. It's hard to understand and empathize. Oftentimes, if you haven't been through hell and back. But we know the survivors of pain, of trauma, of colonialism, of systems of oppression that impacts us all. Refugee kids, we sing the songs, we eat and cook the foods, we speak in our broken languages, we laugh and we play, and maybe in our small, big ways of being everything from nothing, the ways that bring back the ways of life that has been so brutally taken and beaten in so many of what we see in the world. We give home to that numbness, to the failed dreams, to the pain, to the suffering, and our identity to say that the next generation will not have to be a refugee kid. Oh, ban đâm bong bên đầu chân ơi, ខ្ញុំសូមលាហើយលាទាំងអាឡ័យតាំងពីរົບខ្ញុំបានឃ្លាតទៅឆ្ងាយខ្វល់ខ្វាយអ្នកស្ដាយពុំមានទៅហើយ Thank you.
Oh my goodness. If I start crying, that's just me being Ada. I cry all the time in my shows. Oh my God, Sina. You know, I want to say this. Gosh, you don't need to be an artist to move people. And you just demonstrate why it is so, when I say there's a danger of the single story, how many stories would be lost if we don't include everyone from the community? If we only have the few people, artists or performers telling stories all the time, how much will be lost if we don't actively encourage people to tell stories, even if they are not artists, writers, or performers, even if they don't have artistic tools. Sina, thank you, thank you. Let's give a moment of silence, because that was amazing. And I want to give people some time to process. You know, silence is a form of language. And I want to give it a minute. Thank you, Sina. Everyone, if you are present here, I don't know how many of you consider yourself artists. Most of the tellers on my shows don't necessarily identify themselves as artists. But you don't need to, you can still create art that moves people without being an artist. Don't let that title intimidate you. No need to apologize. How's everyone doing? Good? If you don't know me, I cry all the time. That's just who I am. I cry. Gosh, I cry all the time. So this is me. This is me. This is what this show is about. People being vulnerable, take us on the journey. We learn about history. It's about emotion. It's about vulnerability. It's about stories that need to be uncovered, discovered, excavated. Stories that need to be told. And each and every one has a story. If you're interested, telling your own stories, contact me, let me know, or go to other platforms that showcase Asian American stories, tell your stories. Our next, are you all good? Our next storyteller, Tanika Journeys. And I don't know if Tanika would necessarily consider herself an artist, but she got stories to tell as well. Tanika moved here. Since she moved here, she has been very much involved with transracial adoption issues. She's a transracial Korean adoptee. She's also the deputy director for program for Hana Center. So today, there are a lot of organizations, even if they are not co-sponsors, they're also community organizations that are doing great work. Check them out. So Tanika, welcome. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm just reminded of how special and important it is for us to hold these spaces. So thank you to all the other storytellers, and especially Ada and Randy, for pushing us to do these things together, even when it's hard. The story that I am choosing to share today, Ada asked us to share a story that we have been wanting to tell. And for me, I interpreted that to be a story that I have never told because it's hard. So this story is called A Day at O'Hare Airport and Why Birthdays Are Hard. I no longer remember where I was or what I was doing when I got the call I had been dreading. After months of battling cancer and eventually being transferred to a hospice near my parents' home in Virginia, my adoptive father's time was drawing near, and I needed to go and say goodbye. It was the afternoon of February 1st, 2015, the dead of winter in Chicago, and a snowstorm was coming. I weighed my options between driving and flying and eventually settled on flying to avoid getting caught in a snowdrift on a 12-hour drive. So I booked the only flight I could find and headed to O'Hare Airport. I will spare you much of the details of the next 24 hours. Suffice it to say, by the time I arrived at my departure gate, my original flight had been canceled, as had all flights leaving Chicago due to the impending storm. Desperate to get booked on the first flight out, I dragged my suitcase up and down the halls of the terminal from kiosk to kiosk, stopping intermittently to drown my tears in cocktails at the airport piano bar. I spent a fitful night drifting in and out of consciousness on a makeshift bed of tattered chairs and became increasingly distraught by the thought that I might not arrive in time to say goodbye. Like many people, the relationship I had with my dad was complicated. In some ways, we were really similar. We were resourceful, confident, talkative, competitive, and remarkably stubborn. We fought a lot when I was growing up. Like me, my dad had been adopted as an infant, although for him it had been within his biological family, while I had immigrated from South Korea to New Jersey to be placed with a white family with whom I had no prior connection. My dad chose not to meet his birth father, although they lived only a few towns apart. To this day, I haven't been able to make contact with my birth family, although I've tried, due in part to the unregulated nature of intercountry adoptions at that time, and in part due to the laws in Korea that limit disclosure of adoption information. Being a transracial intercountry adoptee is a lifelong journey that began for me with the loss of my birth family, birth country, and birth culture, not by choice. It continues with me choosing to reclaim my past while also choosing to grow in relationship and love my adoptive family, knowing there are things about me and how I interact with the world that they can probably never understand, and that one day they too may be gone. I've often wondered if my dad was more aware of my complicated feelings and existence in our family than he let on. Growing up, we didn't talk about race or ethnicity, and we didn't talk about loss. I knew my family loved me and wanted me to feel accepted, but they weren't equipped with the tools to engage with me about my identity and lived experience as a transracial Korean adoptee. In the past few years before his passing, my dad developed close relationships with a number of international students and immigrants of color at the school where he taught, and he would share about what he was learning from them with me, their backgrounds, experiences, values, their dreams, and struggles. Through these relationships, my dad was able to grow and broaden his perspective in a way that also helped him understand and relate to me. This one action meant a lot to me. Returning to that snowy scene at O'Hare Airport, it was nearing evening the following day when flights finally began to be cleared for takeoff. It was dark when I landed at the airport in Virginia. By the time I arrived at the hospice where my dad was, he was no longer able to speak. He had a strong physical reaction to my arrival and was sedated, and he remained heavily sedated from that point on. Over the next few hours, my mom and I stayed by his side so he wouldn't be alone. His breathing became increasingly labored as his lungs slowly filled with fluid. Eventually, he breathed one last breath and was gone. At that moment, I felt incredibly alone. It's now been 6 years, almost, since my dad died, which was a few weeks before my 30th birthday. I struggled for years after my dad's passing, which was for me a deep cut that reopened the wound of separation from my birth family 30 years earlier. Time heals, and I eventually came to acknowledge and accept both of these losses. For a long time, I hated going to O'Hare Airport, but I got over that too. Each year, when my birthday rolls around now, I am reminded of the inevitability and interconnectedness of life and death, love and grief, family and separation, with death as the thing that ultimately gives life such rich meaning and beauty. I'm incredibly thankful for this one life with all its complexity, the choices we get to make, the love we share, and as my dad would say, the chance to live each day to its very fullest with no regrets. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanika. Oh, can we give Tanika a round of applause? If I started crying, that's just, you see, you don't need to be an artist to move people, Tanika. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to give everyone some time to write how you feel, to bear witness to stories that have been shared. Thank you so much. It's difficult. I know it's a difficult stories to share, especially at the end of the year about loss, identity, adoption. So I appreciate you share that story. I'm going to give a few more minutes for people to bear witness to Tanika's story. I want to check in with everyone. How's everyone doing so far? Are people as emotional as I am? You are? Are you crying? I don't know why. Either I'm getting old or something. I cry all the time when I hear stories. Beautiful. I want to emphasize again, you don't need to be an artist to move people. Share your stories. Be brave, be fierce. If you don't share stories, the ghosts will haunt you. Speak your truth to the universe. Once you do that, you own your experience. Love that, love that. How's everyone doing? Good? We are coming to our end. Our last storyteller, Grace John McGibbon. I hope I didn't pronounce it wrong. She's the executive director for Coalition for Better Chinese American Community, which is an organization that does policy and planning. I have been wanting to have Grace tell stories for quite some time and never got a chance to invite her. And I'm so excited to have her to tell stories. And I have to say this, I want to mention this. Grace is also a great singer. She sings at a church, and I have seen her and her family sing. She oftentimes have those videos on Facebook, and I wish, after today, I'm inspired by Escorn. I hope, or Grace, I hope I will take some singing lesson. Grace, take it away.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you, Randy and Ada, for inviting me and for sharing the space. Randy actually asked me how I met Ada. I met Ada, probably about 15, 18 years ago, but that's a different story. We'll share that some other time. And my story also has O'Hare Airport and my dad in it. But here it is. Hi, my name is Grace. I have been married to my college sweetheart for almost 30 years, and we have 4 children, ages 19 to 27. If you think that this looks like the perfect introduction at an Asian American church retreat, you probably haven't met my family. You see, my husband Tom is an African American man that grew up in Kansas City, while I am a Chinese American woman who grew up in Hong Kong. In 1984, I won a 2-year academic scholarship to attend a boarding school in Boston. Well, at age 16, it seemed like a really great idea to put 9,000 miles between myself and my parents. So little did I know that the physical distance would become a lifelong emotional journey of ups and downs, and of a tenacious commitment to be supportive, even when you do not completely understand. After graduating from high school, I came to Chicago for college. That very first weekend, I met a college senior at the end of a cross-country team practice. He had big, inquisitive eyes, an easygoing manner, and a fierce intelligence that loves questions and debates as much as I did. We quickly became friends and then started dating. While his family quickly welcomed me, I wasn't so sure about my own parents. Some months after we started dating, I just casually told my mother that I was dating a Black schoolmate. She quickly responded that she didn't think that it was such a good idea, and I quickly changed the subject. Over the next 2 years, whenever my mom tried to ask me what happened to the Black boyfriend, I would mumble something like, "Oh, I have many friends," and then she would quietly let the subject drop. One summer break, I was home in Hong Kong while Tom was in Chicago, and he would send letters to my brother's dorm every single day. Each weekend, my brother would come to my room and unload a stack of letters. "Tell your boyfriend not to draw flowers and other cute things on the envelope, please," my brother would say. But he would keep bringing letters home every weekend. Then came my junior year in college. By then, Tom and I had been dating for 2.5 years, which seemed like a really long time to a 20-year-old and a 23-year-old. So I brought up with my parents that the two of us planned to get married when I graduated from college. Well, there weren't any Zoom calls in those days, so this conversation took place over a crackly long distance phone line. They didn't respond on the phone. A few weeks later, they declared, again on the phone, "We want to come visit you in Chicago for Christmas." Okay. So as soon as finals were over that December, I started baking Christmas cookies and getting the dorm room all cleaned up. And on the evening that my parents arrived at O'Hare Airport, Tom and I went to pick them up. The meeting was not too warm, but cordial enough. While we were waiting to get my parents' luggage, Tom made the mistake of putting his arm around my mother's shoulder, thinking that she was me. She jumped, and the evening went downhill from there. We dropped off my parents' luggage with my college advisor, who was kind enough to have my parents stay in her guest room, and then walked around the corner to my dorm. It's time to bring out the Christmas cookies I baked, I thought. But the cookies and niceties only lasted a few minutes. Very quickly, the conversation turned to the fact that I told my parents that Tom and I were planning to get married 1.5 years later. "It's not a good idea to get married too soon," my mother declared. She obviously was thinking about this the entire plane ride with all the layovers. Remember, there were no direct flights between Chicago and Hong Kong then. My dad, who has a more laid-back personality, wanted to wait until later to continue the discussion. But me, ever my mother's daughter, answered back quickly, "Why not? Is it because Tom is Black?" My mother started crying. My dad, again, ever the patient man, said, "It's late. Let's talk about that tomorrow." Tom then jumped in. "I am a good man. I will take care of your daughter. You just don't understand her." "How dare you lecture me," said my mother, who was still sobbing. I honestly don't remember how we managed to get my parents back to my advisor's apartment that night, but we did after some more heated words, and Tom agreed to stay away for a few days. My parents and I spent the next few days visiting their friends, including some well-meaning uncle from my church at home, who also told me that interracial marriages are difficult, especially with races as different as Chinese and Black, and that I should really reconsider. On the 4th day of my parents' visit, they wanted to go to the Art Institute, and I asked if Tom can come along. My parents agreed, with only the very slightest hint of hesitation. We all had a great time at the Art Institute, and I was so proud that both Tom and I were on our best, most respectful behavior. That evening, my dad sat us down and said, "Grace, your mother and I love you and your siblings very much, and there's nothing any one of you can do that will make me not continue to support you. Choosing whom you want to marry is a big decision, and whatever you decide, I will support your decision." Years later, I found out from my parents' friends that they asked their Friday night Bible study to pray over Grace's relationship week after week, from my freshman year in college until the day I got married. But to my parents' credit, they never raised another objection after the Christmas they came to Chicago to try to talk me out of the relationship. On our wedding day in November 1991, everyone, Friends and families on both sides of the family seemed happy. My father passed away suddenly in Hong Kong in the middle of January earlier this year. Over the years, my parents remained supportive of Tom and me and our 4 children. Looking back, it was understandable for them to be concerned about the decision that 2 very young people were making. But I am forever grateful to my dad for deciding to always be supportive of his children. And there's only one way that I can pay my dad back, and that is to be unconditionally supportive of my own children, even when I may not completely understand them. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Grace. I'm going to give a few minutes for people to, Grace, you don't need to be an artist to move people. I feel so moved. How many of you can relate to Grace's story, having difficulty with your parents about issues? I want to give you a few minutes. It's the end of the year, it's holidays. The show is really about difficult and vulnerable stories. And I know a lot of people are struggling with having to navigate relationships with their family during this holiday time, even as we're physically distant. But pick up the phone, make a call, continue the difficult dialogue, regardless of that issue, race, gender, sexuality, anything. This is the end of our show. May I invite people to unmute yourself? Can you say out loud, how are you? How's everyone feeling right now? Give me a word of your feeling. If you can unmute yourself and just say a word, how you're feeling. Just feeling, one word.
Heavy.
Heavy? Okay, keep going.
Inspired.
Inspired, I love that. Keep going.
Bold.
Unique and touching.
Touching, bold. See, did you say bold?
Yes.
Very good. Keep going.
Connected.
Connected, I love that. Keep going.
Also connected.
Connected, very good. Keep going. Grateful, very good. Keep going.
Heartfelt.
Heartfelt. How many of you show your hand or give a love or sign that you are ready to tell stories next year? Oh, very good. Sit. Yeah. A sign. Raise your hand. Thumbs up. A love. Absolutely. You know what you need to do. Contact me. Share your stories. Thank you so much. This is the end of our show. Gosh, everyone, thank you so much for being here Wednesday evening. I know you can watch TV, you can watch Netflix, but you chose to be here. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you so much. Please check out the work of the organizations, Chinese American Museum of Chicago, Japanese American Service Committee, National Cambodian Heritage Museum, but also OCA Greater Chicago, Hana Center, Tricon Chicago, and also Chinese American for Better, let me make sure, a Coalition for Better Chinese American Community. All the organizations, check out their work. They're doing wonderful work in our community. Check out. Randy, anything to say before I wrap this up?
I want to say thank you so much, Ada, and thank you so much for coming out here on a Wednesday night. I really appreciate all of your support and to these wonderful tellers. And I really hope that you get to tell your story and that you get to make your mark for next year and moving forward, because when we get assaulted through our identities and being foreigners, the way to do it is to tell our story and to make that story stick and to write more stories and to make sure that we create communities that become our home. Thank you.
Oh, everyone, I love you. Love, love, love. This is what this community is about. Thank you so much, all the tellers, Escorn, Veronica, Isabel, Tanika, Sinam, and then Grace. Everyone, thank you so much for bearing your soul and then share your heart. It's brave to be vulnerable, to share your stories. All of you give us a gift tonight. You trust us with your gift, and that was beautiful. Everybody, thank you for your love for our tellers and for the show. Thank you so much. Contact me. You know how to contact me if you want to share stories for next year. This is beautiful. Bye, everybody. Until next time, take care of yourself. Happy holidays. Talk to your family, even if it's going to be difficult conversation. Best of luck. Love, love, love.
Thank you
Everybody
so
take care of
much,
yourself.
everyone. Take good care of yourself. Happy holidays.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Ada. Have a good one.
Bye, Escron. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Happy holidays.